Tonight on Talking Points, President Trump's executive order on health care is set to impact small businesses and their employees.
What the president is doing is affecting the ability of vulnerable people to receive health care right now.
Talking Points contributor Sabrina Maggiore sat down with potential state Senate candidate Dr. Rachel May to talk about the future of I-81.
Dr. May says she thinks it's time for elected officials to take a stand on the issue.
Well, I really believe this is an issue that's going to affect a lot of people in this district.
Personal and professional turmoil continue for movie executive Harvey Weinstein as decades of sexual harassment catch up to him.
Austria has itself a new chancellor. He's the youngest in Europe and is poised to move the country in a more conservative direction.
Vielen, vielen Dank. Vielen, vielen Dank.
And President Trump is sending the Iran deal to Congress for a vote after decertifying it late last week.
All that and more ahead. This is Talking Points.
Our top story tonight, health care. Where does the Affordable Care Act stand following President Trump's executive order? And what can we expect in insurer markets moving forward? I'm Mike Riccardi.
And I'm Josh Carney. An executive order on health care from President Trump is drawing praise and criticism alike. It aims to increase competition and consumer choice with lower prices. With the order, insurers are expected to be able to sell short-term plans that don't meet Affordable Care Act guidelines, and more business could band together to buy coverage. Employers would also have the opportunity to support workers in their purchase of health care.
Trump says the executive order will begin saving the American people from the nightmare of Obamacare, but it does not change the main provisions of the Affordable Care Act. Things such as subsidies that assist middle-income people in buying health insurance and the expansion of Medicaid. That's not to say the order couldn't result in real change for some, though. We have Talking Points contributor Morgan Trau here to break it down what it all means.
Thanks, Mike. In short, the executive order would allow small businesses to buy health plans that are sponsored by trade organizations or interest groups. They're called association health plans, and the most important thing here is that those plans aren't tethered to Obamacare requirements. This means they have the authority to deny coverage based on medical history or age, and they can also deny benefits that cover prescription drugs, mental health, and substance abuse, all things that were covered under Obamacare. People would also be able to buy short-term, cheaper health plans. These health plans would extend under the executive order, under Obamacare. The max duration of short-term plans was 90 days. Something to note is that while these plans cost less, they often provide less coverage. And the executive order would allow employers to financially support their employees in buying individual market coverage. They'd help workers pay for health care costs that include deductibles and copays. Trump maintains that this will expand access and lower costs for health care. Senator Susan Collins disagrees. Take a listen to what she had to say.
What the president is doing is affecting the ability of vulnerable people to receive health care right now. This is not a bailout of the insurers. What this money is used for is to help low-income people afford their deductibles and their copays so that their health care is available to them.
Thanks for that, Morgan. Well, joining us now are Morgan and fellow Talking Points contributor Thomas St. Hilaire to talk more about President Trump's executive order. Guys, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having us.
So, Morgan, what are some of the examples of things that the executive order leaves out?
So it's going to roll back on federal requirements for birth control coverage. So this will allow employers to object to covering contraception services on the basis of religious beliefs or moral convictions. So basically, IUDs, birth control pills, patch, and the shot all cost above $460 a year, with IUDs being about $1,000 every 4 years, birth control pills being $600 a year, the patch being $600 a year as well, and the shot being $460. Without insurance, millions of women are going to have to pay out of pocket for this.
Now, those subsidies, Donald Trump announced Thursday that he would be cutting for insurers. Now, Thomas, what does that mean in the grand scheme of things?
Sure. So the subsidies that are provided are given to insurance companies to cover lower deductibles and out-of-pocket costs for low-income Americans. So as of 2017, that was about $61,000 a year for a family of 4. And what you're going to see as a result of this is because companies still have to provide this care to the lower income Americans. So across the board, premiums are going to increase, and you're going to see that for all Americans.
And how exactly will these subsidy cuts affect the cost of insurance?
Right, so it will affect the cost of insurance in a number of ways. The first way is it will affect the cost for the federal government. So the Congressional Budget Office said this past week that it would increase the federal deficit by about $194 billion over the next decade. That is a significant cost, especially for Republican deficit hawks in Congress. The other cost that will be inflicted is obviously on insurance companies. They will have to do really one of 3 things. They will either have to increase the premiums, they will have to leave the market, or they will have to take financial losses.
Thomas and Morgan, thank you for being here.
Thank you very much.
Up next, we hear from Dr. Rachel May, Syracuse University's Director of Sustainability Education. She'll discuss the future of I-81 and her position on it. Don't miss it.
Hey, look, it's those guys. Are you good to drive?
I'm fine.
How many did you have?
I should be fine.
You should be.
Go and step out of the vehicle for me.
See ya, buddy. Good luck. So turns out, buzz driving and drunk driving, they're the same thing, and it costs around $10,000. So not worth it.
When I was in foster care, I never knew when I would have to move. So I always had my suitcase ready to go. Then one day, I was adopted. My new parents opened their hearts and home to me. My parents cook my favorite breakfast for me every morning. My parents take me on trips I never thought I would go on. They gave me a home and an even better reason to use that suitcase. My parents aren't perfect, but they're perfect for me.
Fancy pants peanut butter? A big screen television? You haven't even bought a sofa yet. A motorcycle? When your father finds out, he's gonna flip his shoes with 2 buckles? What do you even need 2 buckles for? Mr. Big Shot, buying whiskey shots for everybody in the bar. From the looks of it, I'd say nobody even remembers. Feed the pig.
The I-81 interstate highway continues to be the talk of the town. Portions of the elevated road in Syracuse are nearing their end, and plans for repair or replacement are crucial. The challenge becomes how to move forward, and the decision could play a pivotal role in the lives of those who live and work in the area. Our own Talking Points contributor Sabrina Maggiore sat down with Syracuse University's Director of Sustainability Education and future candidate for the state Senate, Rachel May, to understand her take on I-81.
Thank you, Dr. May, for joining us. First off, last week there was a rally in Hanover Square for Rally for the Grid. Can you talk to us about what this grid option is?
Sure, I'm happy to. So I-81 cuts right through the middle of Syracuse, and it really breaks the center of the city from the east side of the city, and kind of, some people talk about it as a knife or a hatchet right through the middle of the city. And so it's, useful life is coming to an end. Something has to be done. It's either going to be torn down and rebuilt, or they're talking about a tunnel option instead of the overpass that we have now, or it would be just roads, a grid of roads at street level, which we're calling the community grid. And that would just be redesigned roads where Almond Street is and some of the parallel streets are to it.
The State Department of Transportation right now is currently looking into a lot of different options. You mentioned one of them is the tunnel option. Why do you think the grid is the best option for Syracuse?
So from my viewpoint, neither of those is a sensible option, whereas the community grid actually has the option of returning a whole lot of land to useful life in the city, where people could live there, people could have businesses there, there could be bicycle traffic and pedestrian traffic and multiple uses for the land, and it potentially could bring a whole lot of land onto the usable tax rolls of the city, which is really struggling right now. So there are a lot of good reasons to build the grid.
You're planning on running for New York State Senate. How does I-81 fit into your platform?
If I do run, I'm planning to announce next month against Senator Dave Valesky, who has not taken a stand on I-81, and I think that's irresponsible. I really believe this is an issue that's going to affect a lot of people in this district. It's going to have a huge impact on the economy of this area. I think potentially the grid could have an enormous positive impact on the economy of Syracuse, and I think our elected officials and people running for office should take a stand on it one way or another.
And so you were Director of Sustainability Education here at SU, and you've sort of been involved in local politics for a little bit now. Why the decision, or why the plan on running now?
So I've never held public office before. I've never even thought about running for office before, but this year a lot of people are stepping forward and saying it's time that we not sit on the sidelines anymore of our government because of what happened in the elections in 2016, and in a general sense that the people have lost control of what our government is doing.
Thanks, Sabrina. You can catch more of that interview at CitrusTV.com. Be sure to check it out. Last week, a New York Times article revealed that Hollywood exec Harvey Weinstein had been sexually assaulting women for decades. As the days went by, more and more women have shared their accounts of what Weinstein did to them. Weinstein is out at the Weinstein Company and the Film Academy and will likely face criminal charges. But this had happened for decades and it only came out now. Many women in Hollywood have said that he is hardly the only man doing this and have commented on the toxic culture of the business. Talking Points contributor Dan Prager is here to talk about how Weinstein's actions will affect Hollywood, Washington, and the country as a whole. Dan, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So like I said, this has been going on for decades. Why now?
Well, first off, I just want to say that when I do these segments, it takes a lot of research, and the more and more I research this, the more shocking and appalling things I have found, and it's just incredible to see just the horrible culture going on with this. But that said, why now? When I hear that, it kind of sounds like, why not before? Why, when all of these women had stories, why did one person not come out? And the simple answer is they did, and they were shut down. It's an incredibly hard business to get into, and Harvey Weinstein is arguably the most powerful person in Hollywood. At the Oscars, he is the second most thanked person of all time, tied with God. Harvey Weinstein is a man who can make or break careers, and he broke plenty of the careers of women who didn't do what he said, and men as well. He was physically abusive as well as sexually. He was, in every sense of the word, a bully, and if you didn't do what he said, he would break your career. If you did, you would get great things. So these women kind of felt forced in this business. You had to do what he said.
So that history of abuse, how does that factor into the extent of these allegations?
Well, like I said, he's one of the most powerful people in Hollywood, and you hear all of these big names, dozens and dozens of women, from actresses to these lower-level workers, talking about how Weinstein sexually harassed them, talking about how other people sexually harassed them. This is kind of come as a chain reaction where you hear something about Weinstein. There was about Ben Affleck, that he had been groping women for years beforehand. You're hearing women come out about Oliver Stone, the director. And it's not just them. There's multiple women every day still coming out saying Weinstein groped me, molested me, or that another famous person in Hollywood did it. This is really a wave after wave, honestly, of people coming out and admitting what's happened to them.
So like you just said, Weinstein's not the only one. So what sort of precedents is this going to set for the industry moving forward? I mean, is this sort of bombshell likely to change things?
You'd like to hope so, and I do hope so. I think that with the ousting of Weinstein, you say, all right, nobody's safe. But if you look at the list of people who have done this over the past, I don't know, couple of years, Bill Cosby, Bill O'Reilly, Roger Ailes, Ben Affleck, Casey Affleck, who just won an Oscar for Best Supporting Actor, even after it came out that he had been sexually assaulting women. It doesn't seem to really affect people. Think about Donald Trump. I mean, whether you believe or not the stories, it was told that he'd been assaulting all of these women, and it didn't really affect him electorally. And I don't want to make this a political issue, because it's not. It's a human issue. But truth of the matter is, Donald Trump, he did that as an entertainment figure, not a political figure.
Thank you for paying attention to that. We'll certainly keep our eye on it. When we get back, Austria has itself a new leader, and a young one at that. He's determined to shake up politics in the European nation, and as the most recent populist leader to enjoy success in the region. We'll talk about it after the break.
Got a quarter?
Your daughter just had her first breakup. Do you A, put yourself in her shoes? B, console her?
Don't worry, sweetie. This is gonna happen a lot.
Or C, find her a new boyfriend?
Nice, single boys. That was weird.
As a parent, there are no perfect answers. But you don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same.
Come on, it's not that hard.
My big man fingers are having a problem with these little tiny buttons.
Whoa, watch it there. Your blood pressure's gonna go through the roof.
Tell me about it. I'm trying to learn how to get it down. Instead, it keeps going up.
High blood pressure can increase the risk for heart attack or stroke. Learn how to keep yours at a healthy range.
Ever hear a voice command? Just say text barbershop to 97779.
That's not what I said.
Just give me that. Now my blood pressure's up.
Austria is now home to Europe's youngest leader, after 31-year-old Sebastian Kurz won Sunday's national election. Kurz leads the People's Party, a center-right party that expects to push for immigration controls and a more robust social welfare system. We have Talking Points contributor Jack Watson here to talk about yesterday's election. Jack, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So like I said, he wants immigration control, but he also wants a robust social welfare program. Where exactly on the scale does this party fall?
Now, Mike, Sebastian Kurz's right-wing party is right-wing. It's conservative, it's anti-immigration, but it believes in a welfare state, just not a welfare state in which resources from refugees and illegal immigrants are used instead of resources that, in their eyes, should belong to the citizens of Austria who have paid into the system for X amount of years.
Now, that divide is compounded by the fact that the party's identity didn't necessarily win out within the parliament. So how will that affect Kurz going forward if he's able to rally a coalition government?
Well, the People's Party, which is Kurz's party, won the majority, well, not the majority of the votes, but they won 32% of the votes. The next greatest amount of votes came from the Freedom Party, which is the populist party, which there is certainly ideological alignment with these two parties. They're both right-wing parties. They could combine to make a coalition government and unite in terms of their conservative political leanings and anti-immigration leanings to pass some anti-immigrant legislation.
And how do things for Europe look moving forward? I mean, are we going to see the continued rise of more right-wing parties? Is this a telltale sign?
Well, there are a few more elections left in the month of October. There's the Slovenian election, there's the Icelandic election, and the Czech election. But they don't seem to have nearly as much of a right-wing leaning as the Austrian election did. It seemed like a lot more of a possibility in the past with Marine Le Pen in France and now Sebastian Kurz in Austria, but it seems like for those countries moving forward, the outlook is not nearly as right-leaning as we have seen in this most recent Austrian election.
Thanks, Jack. We'll definitely be paying attention to those elections in the future. Thanks.
Well, after much anticipation, President Trump has decertified the Iran nuclear deal, a move that now gives Congress the power to decide its fate on a vote. Some in Iran are responding with frustration, including President Rouhani, who said in a televised address that the Iranian nation does not expect anything else from the U.S. and President Donald Trump. As tensions mount between the U.S. and Iran, Talking Points contributor Elijah Shamma joins us. He's got the answers on what Trump's move could mean for the future. Elijah, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So now that the decertification debacle has kind of reached this point, what is the timeline for decertification and how will that look moving forward?
Well, really what's happening is this is getting added to kind of Congress's plate. He's tossed it back down to Congress, and it's really kind of up in the air because Republicans are kind of walking a fine line. They need all 52 Republicans, and they also need 8 Democrats to get this thing across the finish line. And following kind of health care and tax reform, this is another big kind of meal to put on their plate. The timeline for this is likely to be sometime in the next year, but we really have to kind of look at what this deal is and whether or not we're going to completely scrap it or if we're going to keep parts of it or try to renegotiate, because there are other parties. And right now there's a bit of a race between the U.S. and Tehran to see who gets to Brussels first in terms of who can make their case to the EU on whether or not this should be saved or gotten rid of.
Now, Elijah, Iran clearly is not happy with the decision by President Trump. Where do they go from here?
Well, the thing with Iran is what they can do is really kind of advocate for themselves to EU, to member countries that kind of don't like the fact that Trump has decertified this deal. They're pleading their case and saying, look, we're doing what we have to do, we're doing what was told, and you guys are pulling the rug out from under us. This isn't fair. So that's really the majority of what they can do right now, is plead their case to the EU to try and either keep this deal or side with them in the future.
Now, the majority of these nations on the international stage do not agree with this moving forward. Is there anybody that might agree with President Trump, or is there any other angle that's at play within this fight?
There are 2 big countries in the Middle East who kind of agree with what Trump is doing, and that's Israel and that's Saudi Arabia. And 2 countries you wouldn't necessarily think agree on something like this. But both of them see Iran as a threat. Saudi Arabia is currently in this kind of proxy war with Iran over kind of control of the Middle East, and Iran has said consistently that they want to see Israel destroyed, or they'd like to see kind of a war in Israel. So Israel doesn't like having that kind of heated rhetoric so close to it. So both of these countries very much don't want to see a strong Iran in the Middle East.
Elijah, thank you.
Thank you.
President Trump continues to commit to the coal industry. A recent proposal filed by the EPA is an indication. We'll have that and another story you may have missed after the break. Stay with us.
They said I have troll teeth.
That my voice sounded like a possessed baby doll.
That no one would ever love someone as stupid as me.
That I was fat, ugly.
Disgusting.
The effect of bullying is potent.
We will no longer be the silent majority.
Now, when you see online bullying, there's something you can do about it.
We're gonna take action with the I.
I am a witness.
I am a witness.
I am a witness.
I am a witness.
I am a witness, and so are you.
Some stories don't capture the mainstream attention they deserve. This week on Talking Points, we have the state of the coal industry in the United States and how California is using prison inmates to help fight wildfires. A hallmark of President Trump's campaign was his promise to rescue the U.S. coal industry, a promise he has made efforts to keep. Just this past week, the EPA filed a proposal to repeal former President Obama's Clean Power Plan, which was designed to limit carbon emissions and promote a switch to greener power sources. Trump has also lifted Obama's 3-year moratorium on federal leasing to coal companies. Despite these efforts, however, the coal industry seems beyond the point of revival.
Coal companies across the country are being forced to decrease the size of their workforces. Coal companies themselves understand the dire situation and appear to be skeptical about the Trump administration's ability to save the industry. Letters obtained by the Washington Post reveal coal executives are not optimistic about the future, with some canceling pending lease applications. A total of 5 applications have been canceled since the Obama-era moratorium was lifted, with some companies citing weak market conditions as the reason behind their cancellations. Coal continues to be hurt by the popularity of natural gas as a power alternative in addition to resistance from environmentalists.
As California continues to suffer from rampant fires, the state is turning to all available options to fight the flames. Low-security inmates are suiting up to help put out the wildfires in California. Inmates volunteer to participate in the program in exchange for a pay of $1 per hour and 2 days off their prison sentence for every day that they are in the program. Inmate firefighters also move outside of their respective prisons and into conservation camps, which provide a more relaxed form of housing for volunteers. In spite of the success of the program thus far, some are disgusted with the conditions.
Former Richmond, California Mayor Gail McLaughlin described the practice as slave labor. McLaughlin, a candidate for lieutenant governor, says that it is not acceptable for the inmates to be working for next to nothing. A California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation spokesman says that it is unfair to describe the inmates as enslaved, given it is a volunteer program. The spokesman also pointed out that the wage of $1 an hour is the best available for prisoners. Volunteers receive $2 a day when they are not on the fire line.
After a quick break, Mike and I will go over the stories you should be following in the weeks ahead. We'll be right back.
There are 16 million children struggling with hunger in America. This is a serious problem, but one we can solve. Visit feedingamerica.org to help. Together we can solve hunger. Together we're feeding America.
Maybe he's really focused.
Maybe he likes spinning the wheels.
Maybe he just loves trucks.
Preoccupation with objects is one early sign of autism. Learn the others today.
When they test you, stand firm and move only when you hear the seatbelt click that says they're buckled in for the drive. Never give up till they buckle up.
So, same time next week?
Well, of course.
The budget for the next fiscal year is quickly approaching, and the GOP is scrambling to put together a strong enough majority to solidify the vote. The Republicans hold 52 seats in the Senate and have had minimal wiggle room when it comes to rallying the entire party behind legislation. The next fiscal year begins on October 1st, and both Congress and the Senate will need to pass matching budget resolutions in order to move forward on the GOP's prospective tax cut legislation. The conservative voting bloc has a slim margin for error already, and the responsibility of passing a budget may not lead to all the items on the leadership and administration's agenda being put in motion. I'll be looking ahead to how conservatives rally their messaging and members as they assemble budget resolutions and move forward towards a vote.
Something to watch for in the days ahead. Starting Wednesday, the Chinese Communist Party will convene for their once in every 5 years Congress. The meeting will be used to decide the new leadership of China's Communist Party. Over 2,000 delegates will vote on 370 positions within the party's Central Committee. These new members will then elect 25 members to the Politburo, who will then decide the country's top leadership. Despite new members, Chinese President Xi Jinping is expected to solidify his position at the top of the party. Experts are also watching for shifts in ideology and whether or not a clear successor to President Xi will arise. As the secret meeting approaches and the Chinese government censors media outlets, be on the lookout for any clues as to what direction the major global power is heading.
Well, that's all we have for tonight. Thanks for joining us.
Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for clips and full-length episodes.
For all of us here at Talking Points, I'm Josh Carney.
And I'm Mike Riccardi. Good night.